request everyone else to kindly put their microphones on mute and videos turned off so that there's no disturbance while is talking. The main panelists can keep their videos turned on, but the others I would request to keep their videos turned off for better connectivity. You can use the chat option to type in your questions. Alternately, the moderator would invite you to give your intervention when the floor opens up for discussion. So those are the few logistical things that we need to keep in mind as we proceed for this discussion. Today's discussion is moderated by Ambassador Manju Seth, and the opening remarks would be given by our Joint Secretary and CEO of ICM, Shri Abbagani Ramu. So with those few remarks, I'll now invite our CEO, Shri Abbagani Ramu, to make his inaugural remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Surabhi. Good afternoon to everyone. It is nice to see some of the familiar faces. Let me start with welcoming moderator Ambassador Manju Seth, Professor Chandrasekhar Bhatt. He was a former professor and head of Center for Study of Indian Diaspora, University of Hyderabad, where I belong to. Mr. Manish Shingal, old friend, Deputy Secretary General, FICCI, and Mr. Gautam has not joined yet, but Ms. Nadira Hamid, CEO, Indo-Canadian Chamber of Commerce. So welcome all of you to this webinar on interesting theme of engaging diaspora. You know, the main objective is to strengthen the linkages with our diaspora, with a main focus on the economics and their contribution to Indian economy. As all of you may be aware that our Prime Minister has a vision. He enunciated the vision of India, making it a 5 trillion economy and a self-reliant economy that is called Atmanirbhar Bharat, and with a focus on vocal for local. So with these objectives in future in mind, so now we are about 2.9 trillion, almost our GDP. So that is a huge task. And not only the efforts within the India, we need contributions from outside India also, where the friends like our Indians, Indian diaspora, Indian overseas citizens, so they can also contribute to economics. So these are the main background of today's discussion. So let me briefly tell you what we have been doing so far. So for engaging diaspora, first let me talk about the strengths. So as you know that there are about 32 million Indian diaspora, both including persons of Indian origin and non-resident Indians, which is generally about 60-40. And their contribution through remittances, which is highest in the world received by any country, that is about $80+ billion per year. Of course, the talent and the skills of this diaspora have been very well recognized across the world. So you know that I need not to reiterate that their contribution to the major economies like US, UK, Europe, and of course some of the Middle East countries. But our engagement with the diaspora has been very strong. Particularly, I can classify our engagements into 4 categories. It is called 4 C's. That we care, and we connect, we celebrate, and we make them to contribute for India. So other 3 aspects are not important for this discussion, but let me briefly mention for your background. The care is to take care of their needs in difficulties. For example, the COVID, which is a huge problem for both NRIs and PAOs. So such instances and such difficulties, of course, we take care. But in normal circumstances, there are many issues. So for which we have various schemes called 24 hours helpline and Madat portal, where they can lodge their complaints and we redress them. To connect with the diaspora of previous 2, 3, 4 generations, we have various schemes, particularly the young diaspora children by Know India program, which they visit in India for about a month to see, understand, they go to different parts of India. And of course, there is a scholarship program for diaspora children. So there is also called Bharat Ko Janiye Quiz. These are the general initiatives. Of course, celebratory part is very well known to all of you. It is Prabasi Bharatiya Divas and Prabasi Bharatiya Samman Awards, which are given every 2 years, which when PBD is organized. The most important part, which is relevant, is today is the contribution to development of India, contribution to Indian economy. So there are many aspects, as I mentioned already. One is that remittances, which is about $80+ billion. But in addition to remittances, that we want them to contribute through technology transfer. For example, the Bengaluru, which has become an Indian Silicon Valley, which is a strong links with Silicon Valley in US. So the Indians who are in Silicon Valley of US could contribute for developing another Silicon Valley called Bengaluru in India. So that is an example to give how they can contribute. And of course, there are many aspects like a recent event called Howdy Modi, where that India's image could be projected, where it is a big event, and many people who do not know India before or do not know about the Indian economy, Indian economic facts, they came to know. So there are various ways of their contributing to Indian economy. But most important aspects are for technology transfer is there is a initiative called Global Initiative for Academic Network, where the persons of Indian origin who are excelling in different fields of economy and science and technology, they can come and briefly visit and contribute their wisdom to our academic institutions. That is called Global Indian Network for Academic Network. And of course, there is another scheme called, it is a joint research called Vajra, visiting advanced joint research. So that is also being implemented by Ministry of Science and Technology. So in addition to this technology transfer, of course, the other major aspect which they can contribute is bringing investment to India, foreign direct investment to India. So that has been successful in some of the cases where they played important role convincing the foreign investors and in their country of residence, and that has resulted in substantial increase in FDI. So to conclude my remarks, to make India stronger and developed country, and with this vision in our mind, I think there are many issues which can be resolved once we reach that stage, for which the active contribution and active engagement of diaspora is required. And with these few words, I wish to hear from all of you, and welcome once again, and very much looking forward to hear from all of you. Thank you so much.
To take over the discussion and introduce the speakers and invite them to make their interventions. Thank you.
Good afternoon and namaskar to all of you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon for this very interesting webinar. And Joint Secretary Mr. Ramu, the CEO of the ICM, has rightly put the focus on how the diaspora can contribute and the schemes that the government of India has put forward to engage them and attract their contribution. And our webinar will focus on different aspects, and I expect all our speakers to be able to give their views, of course, and also suggestions. And our very first speaker today is Professor Bhatt, who is currently an independent researcher in diaspora studies. Previously, he was a professor and head of department of sociology at the University of Hyderabad, where he founded and directed the Center for the Study of Indian Diaspora. Recently, he was nominated by the Indian Council of Cultural Relations to deliver lectures across colleges in Guyana on the end of indentured labor practice and an emerging global India. Professor Bhatt has also written extensively on social movements, urbanization, and diaspora studies. And he regularly participates in many conferences, diaspora conferences, and I know how well versed he is, and I'm sure he'll make a very important contribution to the deliberations today. Over to you, Professor Bhatt.
Thank you, Professor Ambassador Manju Sethji. So delighted to see you after the couple of discussions we had in Sada's organization. We have been meeting there across. It's a very interesting theme for discussion, the living roots, the living root bridges between India and Indian diaspora. And I think before I talk about these roots, let me also see the layers of the diaspora, how these different layers of diaspora are seen, and then we come to the roots. And before I get into these layers, I recall one of the very interesting studies by a British thinker, Hugh Thinker, who wrote a book, one of the first works on Indian diaspora called The Banyan Tree. Now, he talks about the tree, not so much about the roots, because he assumes that this tree goes beyond, the branches go beyond and get rerouted there in the land wherever they have moved to. So this is the concept which came up initially under number of scholars, and this is the idea is taken from Rabindranath Tagore. And yes, Indian diaspora has spread its roots globally. And as as Secretary mentioned just now, that we are more than 32 million, and Indians are spread in more than 210 countries. This is what the latest information according to the website you have. And now this group is a very complex group. It's not just if I say Indian diaspora, sometimes I feel I miss lots of things because it's a Indian diasporas, because Indian communities are in different levels or different layers. The first layer, all of us know, was the layer formed during the colonial times, the indentured labor, which migrated to the countries under the British rule to distant lands like Caribbean countries, then to the other side in the Fiji, Australia, and so on. So we have far and wide Indians dispersed. And the first layer essentially is formed by the people who went there for sugarcane cultivation and people, able-bodied people from Bhojpuri region. So this is the one layer of diaspora. And I would prefer often, in order not to confuse it with the second layer, would call this as a PIO diaspora. These are people of Indian origin who moved there for more than 100 years ago. And their fourth or fifth generation, I think we all should be very happy that one of the descendants of Indian has taken over oath as the president of Suriname. And I think it has been widely circulated and recently also quoted by our Prime Minister during his Man Ki Baat. But the second layer is the NRI diaspora. As the name indicates itself, NRIs are those people who started moving from India, maybe from later 40s, from 50s certainly, to the present day. But then NRI diaspora are those people who have gone at least about 8 or 10 years earlier to the present day because they have acquired their citizenship in those countries. One of the major characteristics of calling a group as diaspora is to reroute in their culture or society elsewhere. So you have Indians in a number of developed countries who have gone, and they have rerouted in those countries, and they are the diaspora community because they are no longer Indian citizens. Maybe some of them who have managed to get the OCI card can travel to India and feel free as Indians, except for, I think all of us know, 2 or 3 attributes of Indian citizenship, that you can't contest for the elections or vote in the elections or take any civil servant's job under the government. So these are the OCI card. And maybe I'll mention at some point of time, if time permits or during the question and answer hour, there are certain difficulties in obtaining this OCI card. And now it's much more complicated because the PIOs are also connected with in the same bracket OCI. Those issues maybe at some other point of time. No. The third layer are the NRIs. NRIs are those, we know that they have mainly moved to places where they cannot settle down for a long time. Indians in the Gulf region essentially are the NRI diaspora. These are the groups of diaspora. And if you think in terms of how do we get connected back with them and to gain certain advantages ourselves. And there was one of the points for discussion was whether diaspora can be considered as a resource. I would not be very happy to use the word resource. And if you use it, perhaps it will be seen essentially from the economic point of view, from the point of view of money transfers and point of economic support for India's growth and so on. I would not really put it in that way. Once you make the diaspora feel for their country, they are a part of their country. Whether it's the PIO diaspora would think it's an ancestral home for them. They are equally very emotionally connected with India as much as other Indians who are, we are talking about the NRIs or NRI diaspora and so on. So the need is that they have to be provided certain incentives to feel at home when they come to India. I think the number of measures have taken, I'm sure, after the magnum opus policy statement made by high-level committee under Singhvi, that we have a number of new initiatives taken. Because till then, I don't want to go back to the history and say we didn't care much about them. Out of the 4 cares, now I think we have started caring them much more after 2000 onwards, from the dawn of new millennium, because all of us know that the high-level committee was formed in order to provide certain basic recommendations for the new policy. And I recall that in this new policy, one of the mandate for this committee was country-specific plans of forging a mutually beneficial relationship. This is, I want to emphasize, mutually beneficial. Now, when we talk about investments, it has to be mutually beneficial. The diaspora should be benefited, not only from the profit. There are many other than just the financial. There are gratification, happiness, and the connectivity back home, feeling that you have done something for the country of your home. Ambassador Manjuji, please stop me 2 minutes before the conclusion, okay? Because I may step far beyond. So, the mutual benefit for both the groups, the India and Indian diaspora, and for facilitating their interaction and participation in India's economic development. No doubt, all of them know India needs to be developed, because when they find India developed, the diaspora is more than happy when they find India advancing. I'm sure when India sent at one point of them more than 100 space ships to the from Bangalore center, everyone is so delighted that India is doing well. And when India has acquired many laurels on science, technology domains, etc., Indians everywhere are very happy. So the heart of Indian, wherever they are connected with India, whether it's the PIO diaspora or NRI diaspora. The NRIs, absolutely, you don't have to ask them, please invest in India, because they can't invest elsewhere. Maybe they can think of other countries, but by and large for them, the home, their place where they come from, they would like to perhaps go back. And you see in places like Kerala, you have a huge investment made by the NRIs, and so much so, quite a bit of NRI investment is not productive. You'll find huge bungalows in the center of a huge property where there's no houses anywhere around. That's the way Kerala landscape is. So you'll find here and there the architect built houses, and I'm told one of the largest houses in India, in Kerala, is built. I think it has 140 rooms or something like that. In Kerala by a Keralite from the Middle East. I think recently he expired, so it was covered extensively in many of the media coverages. So then you have to really channelize them. The state and the people have to see that how these resources which they have earned very hard can be channelized. So state need to be proactive. Let me come to another aspect of diaspora. We have been saying diaspora, Indian diaspora. Then again, I would say there's more of Telugu diaspora. Since I'm in Hyderabad, I can talk about, and my students have worked on Telugu diaspora, Punjabi diaspora, Gujarati diaspora. Why I'm saying is these are the states where they have reached out to the diaspora and seen that how the landscape of Punjab can be changed. You'll find in Punjab model global villages. You'll see in Punjab the latest, one of the latest sports stadiums, again from the Punjabis outside, from Canada or from the US. So you'll see the latest hospitals in Punjab. These are all contributions of the diaspora. So there is a need to couple specifically the Indians with the Indian diaspora, and the natural coupling will be from the regional perspective. So I often emphasize there is a special need from each region. And today we have a region and a state coinciding with each other. Like Andhra, former Andhra state was a Telugu state. Today, of course, we have Andhra and Telangana, but then it's a Telugu state. And Punjab is, it's a Punjab. So each state need to be proactive and formulate certain essential linkages possible with the diaspora. They know who are these important people in the diaspora. So one thing, to have a list and connect with them and provide certain schemes. Since I mentioned about Punjab, let me go a little more into details since I have made certain studies on this. What comes to my mind is a scheme called Mera Pinda. Mera Pinda. Mera Pinda is my village. Now, that title itself tells all Punjabis, wherever they are in the diasporic context, that Mera Pinda is something which is very emotionally connected to me. And I would be ready to do whatever I can beyond, after having my whatever needs I have in Canada or in US or Britain and so on, I would like to do something for my village. So you have to connect the villages to the people on the other end, the diaspora. This is one of the major tasks, and it's one of the ways in which we can connect back. So Punjab, Gujarat, even Andhra Pradesh has taken quite a bit of care to see that Telugus outside Andhra Pradesh, I'm talking former Andhra Pradesh, even today, you have a Telangana reaching out the Telangana Telugus outside India, as so much is, Telugus from Andhra Pradesh. So I recall there have been certain NGOs, for instance, the Bairaju Foundation was one of them, where a student of mine who has worked on diaspora, Telugu diaspora, went and worked to connect, find out certain locations, linkages where from people have migrated from Andhra Pradesh, and connect them to
Professor, 2 more minutes.
Yeah, thank you very much. So the significance of the state to reach out, to be proactive to the diaspora will be one of the major ways you can connect. You have, FICCI, for instance. I think there are some persons who are participating in this from the FICCI. FICCI was the first organization to be connected with the diaspora program. During the first PVD, it was the FICCI who was taking care of it, and perhaps after a couple of celebrations, then it was CIA. Both industrial houses have been actually involved with the possibility of connecting with each other. I'm not very sure how much data they have in terms of the linkages and so on. So I see my major emphasis is that we need to look at building bridges back again. If the bridges are lost. Now, where are the bridges lost? I have interacted extensively with the PIO diaspora. I think my last visit was also to Guyana, Trinidad, and so on. And when I go there, I'm a brother to them or an uncle to them. And so I never go and stay in a hotel. They take care of me. It says, brother has come. And I receive the communication also as a brother. It's not just a saying, but it is a feeling that you have with each other. And you also have the same kind of feeling. They are away from us here for so many years, for whatever reason they have gone. May not be on their own they wish to go. As our big brothers who have gone to US now, those big brothers who have gone to US will be investing India, provided we provide them proper trust situation here. Trust situation because the IITians, the IIM people, they have created a trust in the whole of global software industry, wherein we have a lot of contribution made in terms of the percentage of growth. At least I think about, they say about 40% of development, software development is taking place back home in India through those people who have gone to Silicon Valley and they are heading the institutions there. Many of them are from IIT. So IITian brand has a trust. So if you have some IITian, you can be sure about it. So same way, we have to build up trust back home, and then only we can connect with them very efficiently and reach the 5 trillion mark, which Joint Secretary was mentioning. And I thank all of you for listening to me patiently, and thank the Ambassador Ramu for saying that he has been perhaps from the University of Hyderabad, because we have a lot of people, perhaps it will be my first meeting him, a lot of people from University of Hyderabad moved out. So thank you, Manjuji, for this so fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor, for a wonderful and very unique perspective that you have given. And, yes, all these, schemes started by the various state governments have, contributed to development, to local development, and getting new technologies, even in some cases. And yes, a wonderful suggestion that to convert Bengaluru into a kind of Silicon Valley. Already it is partly there, but I think a lot more can be done. And these young, innovative scientists or techies, I should call them, should all connect together. And I think get up to a certain level. Thank you so much. And yes, linkages are very important, but thank you so much. And we can come back to, I think, later for your further inputs after the other speakers have spoken. Next speaker is Mr. Manish Singhal. Good afternoon, Mr. Manish. Mr. Manish is the Deputy Secretary General at the International Division of FICCI, that is the Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry. At FICCI, he oversees the organization's global outreach initiatives and furthers the business interests of the Indian industry. Prior to FICCI, Mr. Singhal spent 22 years working with major Indian transnational companies. So he's really in it and should be able to really help and make a meaningful contribution to this whole discussion today, from the practitioner's point of view as well. And in these transnational companies such as Tata Motors and Eicher, his career involves immense exposure to global multicultural business environment, covering over 60 countries in addition to India. I think that's a wonderful CV, and I look forward to, or we all look forward to your views in the matter, and of how this today's theme and how we can put it into practice, and any ideas, suggestions, and how we can make it easier for our different areas of our diaspora, as mentioned by Professor Bhatt, to be able to contribute to the economic growth of India. Mr. Manish Singhal.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador Seth. Mr. Abagani Ramu, Professor Bhatt, Professor Gautam, Ms. Nadira Ahmed, Shri Piyush Gupta, and of course, Dr. Surbhi Singh. Dr. Singh, thanks for getting all of us on this platform. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Before I start, on behalf of FICCI, I think we all should pay a tribute to all our frontline warriors who are helping us fight COVID in India. And in fact, many of our overseas Indians are doing the same in their countries of residence. So with these words, I think Professor Bhatt has been very kind enough to already introduce a little bit of FICCI and as to why FICCI is here. But just to add a few things, like Mr. Ramu mentioned, not only the first PBD, but of course the last 4 PBDs we've been involved. We've also done Diaspora promotion sessions with Kerala State, with UP State, because like Professor Bhatt mentioned, all the states are having their own strategies. I must thank Professor Bhatt for qualifying when the various categories of overseas Indians. So I was also about to mention about differentiating a little bit between the diaspora, the NRIs, and the migrants, and of course we have a students category. Just a subcategory which I must mention also includes the Girmitiyas, who are the second, third, fourth generation Indians who actually went to the Caribbean islands or Pacific islands and even South Africa, which are the main hubs. And they are largely from the UP and the Bihar belt, and they went mostly overseas during the British rule. So, since there is a very wide variety or categories of overseas Indians, I would probably tend to qualify my discussion as for overseas Indians rather than only diaspora. So, these 30, 31 million overseas Indians are across these categories and across geographies. Some figures say we are there in over 200 countries, but definitely it could be 125 to 150 countries. And this starts from China. In fact, my colleague from FICCI China, who's on the session today, he himself is a second, third generation Indian in China. And of course, we have major hubs in UK, Canada, US, the Gulf, and Middle East, of course. And probably the hot destination today is Australia. So I'll just give you a little bit of background as to how we've been contributing economically in some of these hubs. To start with UK, because Dr. Surbi was kind enough to refer to the FICCI Diaspora report released in UK. We have 65,000 Indian diaspora-owned businesses there, out of which 35 are having at least one woman director on the company. Of these, about over 700 diaspora-owned companies have large turnovers of over £100,000, and they employ almost 175,000 people. They, of course, are in four key sectors: hospitality, healthcare, pharma, and retail, besides real estate and construction. And of course, we all know that now we have eminent Indians as part of the British government. When it comes to Middle East and Gulf, we have about over 8 million overseas Indians in UAE, Oman, and Saudi Arabia itself. Besides that, of course, in terms of their economic contribution to the local businesses, I think they're also contributing a lot in terms of various services they avail, municipal taxes. A big part of the fee for those governments come from business licenses and their renewal. And of course, Indians also end up paying a lot of fines in these countries. So that shouldn't be forgot. And like Mr. Ramu said, in terms of remittances, if my figures are correct, out of the 80 billion he mentioned, 50 billion comes from the Gulf and the Middle East. When it comes to US, again, about 4 million overseas Indians there. They are the second largest source of international students. Also, almost 2 lakh of them study every year. We similarly have about 40% of these Indians who are actually masters, doctorates, and professional degrees. So we all have heard that they are obviously, leading the major US multi corporations like you know about Sundar Pichai and many others. About 1.28 million of these Indians reside in the US with green card, and of course, like in Gulf and UK, they all contribute a lot in terms of taxes, social security, and CSR. Especially during the COVID times, Indian companies and all these Indian companies and diaspora Indians contributed a lot during the COVID times. Last but not the least, I would want to cover Australia as a hot destination. In terms of numbers, just 7.5 lakh currently, but all these have mostly built up in the last 10 years. Most of them also end up going there as students, like it's also for Canada. So about 90,000 students are there, and Victoria, New South Wales are the main hubs within Australia where you find the Indian origin people. In terms of the professionals there, they are largely in transportation, postal, warehousing sectors, and in services, it's healthcare, social assistance, and some of the allied services. Canada, we already have Nadira here, so I won't talk much. But yes, Canada, especially when it comes to Punjab, has a big stakes for India in terms of our diaspora, and you know that they're all over the Canadian landscape, whether it's business or the parliament. You know, when we talk of overseas Indians, uh, we also should probably today look at one aspect which even Professor Bhatt touched in terms of reverse migration. You know, we have three types of phenomena which are happening. One is migration of Indians, which has happened more recently due to economic slowdown and COVID. These are, you know, especially from the Gulf and Middle East, these are highly skilled vocational resources who are returning due to lack of job. Second is high level skilled professionals, whether it's engineers or research people, doctors, who want to return to India and be part of the growth story here. And third, of course, the way our diaspora wants to give it back to the country is by way of investment in our social programs and economic growth. Now, is the Indian government prepared to look at this sort of reverse migration and what the policies are existing to encourage that sort of a reverse migration? Before I talk of that, we also need to see that this reverse migration is somewhat of a double-edged sword. While we get very highly skilled Indians back and who can contribute to our economic growth, there is also a challenge that in a slightly slowing down Indian economy and increasing unemployment growth, it could face some problems for us. At the same times, you know, the very high amount of remittances which come are another area which could get impacted. So, keeping all this in mind, on behalf of FICCI, I would probably like to leave you all with 5 suggestions. You know, we need to look at upskilling of Indian vocational migrants, you know, who are into basic vocational skills like plumbing, electricals, and even basic engineering. We need to have a more aggressive upskilling program for them. The OIA division is already working on it, but probably ones to be asked to leave. How this also helps is that it would somewhere allow us to balance out the reverse migration, which probably would be inevitable. Because whenever economies overseas go down, people will move back. And so, hence, this migrant outflow is very necessary. For maintaining this outflow of Indian migrants, we also probably could look at some platform to cooperate with overseas employers and recruitment agents so that it's a structured way this whole exercise happens. Likewise, for the returning Indians or the reverse migration category of people, we probably need to have a migrant resource center which could look at a sort of a outplacement for these returning Indians to build employment, to build an employment marketplace for Indian companies to look at, because they are very high quality, they have very high quality vocational skills. So Indian companies can actually benefit from the skills which they carry from overseas, which definitely today are of a much higher level. The fourth point I would like to give is that we should similarly have a diaspora resource center. Like Professor Bhatt mentioned, the diaspora has their heart in India. They really want to invest in India in terms of economic opportunities and also in terms of social upliftment. But they get slightly bogged down with a myriad of Indian rules and policies and the systems. So, if there could be a centralized sort of a single window of a diaspora resource center, then they would have at least a single window service towards at least initial guidance for this process. Last but not the least, again, to invoke our diaspora to get involved in our economic activity, I would suggest that if there could be diaspora CEOs roundtables, we have CEOs fora with various countries with CEOs from both India and overseas involved. We could similarly have a diaspora CEOs roundtables in the major diaspora hubs where economic status of the diaspora is very, very high and they are in a position to invest in India. We've shared all these proposals with OIA division from time to time in various forms, and of course would be willing to take them forward with them. With these words, I thank everybody once again, and will look forward to a good session. Of course, also would like to apologize that I may need to leave in about 10 minutes. So I will welcome any suggestions or queries which can be sent to me on email, and Dr. Surbi can freely give my email ID to anybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this very interesting and practical, and your practical suggestions, very interesting presentation. And I think what you have suggested at the end, your 5 points, I think are which the government, I'm sure, will take into cognizance, as you've already also submitted it to them. And in times of COVID, yes, it's more necessary that we have, collaborations, say, for the vaccines, drug development, etc. So I think play a very important role in that. And also, I just was wondering if, from my side, whether FICCI regulatory framework is welcoming or for that also. It's a thought, regulatory framework that exists for an NRI to come and invest easily in India or set up easily in India. That what is currently, the current policy, does it create any hurdles for them? Hello?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, I think I lost you in between. Your voice was cracking. Was it a question to me?
I was just asking whether you feel the current regulatory framework is welcoming for diaspora to come up and set up in India, or invest in India.
See, the regulatory framework has the same challenges for all foreign companies, and that would remain the same for the diaspora. Frankly, the same framework applies to Indian companies also, so they say that it's the same challenges for us. So that's why we suggested that if we could just have a sort of a diaspora resource center where they know where to come. In some of the recent PBDs, we did try to give it a business element with B2B and B2G meetings for the diaspora. So that's what we've been hearing from them, that if they know where to go, and probably a business chamber like FICCI could handle that center, then they would get a starting point, and then of course they have to follow the same procedures as applicable for everybody.
No, that's right. But I remember that FICCI had set up a kind of facilitation many years ago. Is it still functional to do hand-holding companies, and especially the NRI companies and PIO companies? Is that still functional, or
no? That was not being done by FICCI. That was not being done by FICCI. That was being managed by the OIA division only, or the erstwhile MOIA. So I think that got also dissolved. When the transition from MOIA to MEA took place. So, but that's what the idea was, that we bring it out in a different way. That also had very limited teeth, so it couldn't really help too much.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Singhal. And yeah, sure, you have to be a little early, but I'm sure the questions and all can be passed on to you for people
Absolutely.
who have to get clarity on their queries. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, thank you. I will go on to our next speaker, Professor M.K. Gautam. Is he here? Professor Gautam? Professor Gautam is currently the Honorary President of European University of West and East, and the Director of the Indian Diaspora Institute. He specializes in social, cultural, structural anthropology, ethnicity, Indian diaspora, oral and cultural studies, museology, and sociolinguistics. Professor Gautam has published widely within diaspora studies and has headed several diaspora conferences across Indian universities and abroad. He has received many national, European, and international recognitions, including the Vishwa Hindi Samman at the 10th Vishwa Hindi Sammelan in New York. Professor Gautam, over to you. Are you here? I saw his name just now.
He's there, but I think, Master, there is some issue with his mic.
I think he should be unmuted. He's been unmuted.
Yeah, he's unmuted.
Can we go on to the next person and come back to him? Or
Professor Gautam, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear. Can you hear
Please.
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
I have been trying to contact, but was not going on. Okay, then I would speak then.
Yes, please do.
Thank you.
Please do. Please
yes,
go ahead.
Just a minute.
Yeah.
You can't see me, so it's all right. I can't help it.
All right.
First of all, I would like to thank to the Indian Center for Migration and other people, especially Ambassador Manju Seth and Professor Ramuji and Professor Bhatt and also Mr. Singhal. Now, as today, I have to say only two things. I think which would be the part of our diaspora section. First of all, we have to think in terms of what is an Indian diaspora. Of course, Professor Chandrasekhar Bhatt has told that there are two categories, and in those categories we can see there is an Indian diaspora. And of course, we have taken this model from the Chinese diaspora. This is known fact. He also said that High Commission report was also created, and that's why in that after that report, these two categories were created. Of course, now the question is that as this conferences on Indian diaspora and their economic contribution. Now, my problem is here, and I think this is the real problem. The first categories of PIOs, they could not remit anything because they do not have the families there. They did try to contribute some sort of informal business with India. That's a different story. But on the other hand, the very important thing is, I think, which we cannot ignore, and that is the PIOs are not only in the PIOs countries, but after the independence of those countries, most of them came to Europe, and some of them went to States also. Now, my problem is, and this is the real problem, those people who came to Europe, like the Suriname Indians or Hindustanis came to Netherlands. From India, people went to, of course, England. And from the Portuguese colonies, they came to Portugal. And from the French colonies, they came to France. Now, these people, what they did try, they only came for their economic to develop the economic positions. And then they also wanted to settle in these countries. They settled, they got the passports, but the problem was they could only do the work as a petty shopkeepers because they lost or they left agriculture in their own countries, and they did not know anything about the entrepreneurship. So they tried to watch the people of Europe that what they are doing and how they are developing. Because the small shops which they have opened, they had the supply and the demand. For the supply, they used to ask the local, let's say the European people who were importing things from other countries. But at a certain moment, when the second generation came, the second generation started. I'm just giving you an example of Netherlands. They started to do some sort of business. But now here is the biggest problem. I think Ambassador Manju Seth must be knowing this, that they were not given any attention, any importance by the Indian missions. Indian missions never cared for them, only cared for the Indians who came after 1950 from India, and then some of them stayed here. And recently, for the last 20 years, there have been the development of Indians coming to Netherlands and Europe, like the Tata is here for the computer things, software, technology, etc. They came to these countries. And by sort of watching them in which they do their work, of course, Indians did a lot of work here with India, or they also remitted the money. But Surinamese or the or the Surinamese Indians, let's say Netherlands, they could not do anything because they did not have those possibilities of having money or having the relations with India. And as I told to you, Indian missions also did not give importance to them. Moreover, suddenly something started, I think, which we have to understand, and that is the NRI, the so-called NRI, and the PIOs. They, of course, should have been united in all those countries, but they could not, because the Indians or the NRIs always thought the PIOs as uncivilized villagers, because they were speaking their own mother tongue languages, like Suriname developed the Sarnami, which is a combination of Avdi, Bhojpuri, and other Hindis. And of course, from South India, there were the people also Suriname, and there were about 80 families from the Ganjam area. They went there, but they also integrated with other Indians. Now, the problems is here, which is very important. How an indentured, the children of indentured, that means the third generation or the second generation Europe, can do something and help India. And I must tell you one thing, when there are the problems with India, problems like disasters or even the floods or whatever it is, the Suriname Indians in Netherlands do their best. And best means collect money and send to India. That's one thing. But as I started, there have been a rift between the NRIs and PIUs because they never sit together. They never invite each other. And of course, embassy is also not so much interested. And then the question is here that neither the Indians nor the mission people try to understand this 1.5 lakhs of Indians who are here from Suriname only. I'm giving you a small example. How to understand them? Because their language is not known to them. Their traditions are, according to Indians and Indian embassy, outdated. Outdated in the sense they do more than the Indians would do it here, the NRIs will do it. And there started the problem how to understand them. I would think the best way would have been or should be a sort of cognitive approach. Cognitive approach, what a person is thinking and in which way we can help him to have the relations with India, because India, they always wanted to have. Now, the problem is here that there are three concepts I will try to work out, and that is what is their home, and what is their longingness, and what is their belongingness. Without understand all these three concepts, I think we cannot go to any economic contribution. They have done something for their own families, but for India, they have a feeling for India. They can collect money, and they go to India, but they also want to see their roots. Now, there is again the same problem coming, that the missions do not give the problems, and secondly, even in India, people consider them different because they do not know about who are the Indian diaspora people. And the reason is that Indians have no curriculum, even in primary or secondary schools, where it is written that many Indians went to other countries and they have created some sort of India, but with India, their relations, the government is trying, but they are not working, they are not operating as they should have been. So the longingness of India is based on the collective memory of the homeland. Of course, there is also belongingness, and belongingness, then again the problem is, what is the belongingness to them? They have crossed the 7 seas, as the Kalapani it is called. They had the caste names, which are more or less removed, but they still have symbolically. And then if they go to India, even to village there, to visit their villages, they are not accepted. They are accepted because there is a TV, there is this and that, and a big show is there. Oh, our people have come from other country. But there is one idea going on among the Indians also. Why have they come here? What do they want from us? Do they want to have land, this and that? And their caste is also not known because they never say they belong to this and that caste. So these problems are there and they continue. Now, another thing is, for the twice migrants, people, when they go to India, they want to contribute money, etc., etc. First of all, they get a big cultural shock because India does not follow, according to them, a social management. And that's why they sometimes feel very difficult to adjust there. I will only use 2 more examples. And that is, there was one person who wrote his beautiful diary, Munshi Rahman Khan. He was born in 1874 and died in 1972. He himself said, the Indians should follow, the Suriname Indians in Suriname should follow the Indian culture, the Indian civilization, the Indian morals. And I think he wrote a book, very nice book, Khoon Ke Aansu, that the tears of the blood. And I think this is the more important thing, which is still going on. And the last point which I would like to say is, to the third generation, India has become an imagination. The missions are not doing anything. And those people coming from India as holy people, they only try to earn the money. So the youngsters feel we are born, let's say, in Germany or Portugal. So this is our home country. These are our friends who are staying with us. Because we came from the other countries, so that countries can also not be forgotten. But their great grandfathers or forefathers came from India, so there is some sort of belonging with India. But I feel we should try to do something that the Indian diaspora should remain one and can be of importance for India, because all of them, I'm talking about the PIOs, they want to have relation with India. They want to help India with whatever the money they have got. But the responses are not so meager. We are talking, we want to have something, but how? And this is the whole thing. Even the Indian missions, once you ask them, they don't give any importance. They say, well, we will see, we will write to Government of India and help it. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Gautam, for that very interesting perspective, especially on the twice migrants. And I'm aware of this issue of the Surinamis from various people, in the Netherlands, and how they, somehow are not treated well by the other more recent Indian migrants. In the sense, they are considered as another community. They are not considered as Indian origin for whatever reasons. And I think we need to really needs to be changed. And I agree with you entirely that they all need to be made to feel connect with India, and we also need to reach out to them. Earlier the policy there was not very clear clarity on the policy towards the PIOs, and I think that would be one of the reasons on why the missions kept people at arm's length, or certain categories of people at arm's length. But since the 2000s, things have changed, since the Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, etc., have started, and all the other outreach programs. And I think we have moved very much ahead and in this matter. But I cannot say specifically for the Netherlands. But I know that in other countries it has started changing. So thank you very much for this very interesting intervention, and especially you spoke about the feeling of belongingness and unbelongingness. I think that is a very valid point. Many of these fourth, fifth generation do not feel a connect with India, but at the same time, they don't feel that they belong, even in those countries, like in the Netherlands or in France or in the UK. So there is this feeling of belongingness and unbelongingness. And India does need to reach out to this category of diaspora more, with a different approach and not with the same size fits all. Thank you so much again, Professor, for that very interesting intervention. Now may I call upon Ms. Nadira Hamid, who is the CEO and the Indian Indo-Canadian. Is Ms. Hamida there?
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Hamid, CEO of the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber. She has successfully led, promoted, and coordinated delegations to Canada with more than 100 delegates from various business sectors in India. She has been instrumental in the image of Brand Canada in Indian states such as Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal, has facilitated some with government and industry bodies to intensify bilateral business engagement. She has systematically arranged business missions to build higher levels of corporate bilateral relations to be high. I think everybody would like to hear on how the PIOs can, contribute economically, and how you yourself, in your endeavors, what is your experience?
Sure. So first of all, thank you to the Indian Center for Migration for putting together such a pertinent discussion. And also I'd like to acknowledge Ambassador Manju Seth, Mr. Ramu, Joint Secretary, Professor Bhatt, Mr. Manish, Professor Gautam, Mr. Piyush Gupta, and Ms. Surbhi Singh, and who are all here today for putting this together. And I'm very happy to be here and to put in some inputs from my side as well. So first of all, the Indian diaspora. A lot of you have spoken about it. Just want to add that the Indian diaspora is a mighty and a dynamic force. It's a force to be reckoned with. They have settled all over the world, yet they have maintained their traditions, their Indian traditions. If you go to any Indian house abroad, you will see that there'll be the gods, goddesses all over. They're so particular about maintaining their traditions, and at the same time they adapt so well to the foreign landscape. In fact, they're the first to get the accents. Everybody has over there will first have an Indian accent. That's just to be on the lighter side. But so they are a big, big population out there whom we need to address and to talk to. The Indian diaspora, rather the diaspora, the FDI that comes from the diaspora here to India is very different from a foreign FDI, because their motives to invest in India is the investment decisions are not entirely just for a profit. As many of them want to establish a long-term base in India. It is, as many of you have said earlier, their roots that call to them and their love for the country, their belongingness, which they would like to to address and which they would also like to come back. They are also better informed in terms of market conditions, the domestic labor, and economic policies, and consequently have more realistic time frames for project completions and investment returns. So the Indian diaspora, for their part, have many of the elements required for success. They are a model minority, which is a term that I would like to use for them. They are affluent and they are growing in number. They're constantly growing in number. And it is for them, as we have seen, that there is a lot of contrast, because whenever we receive a lot of the Canadians who come to India and who want to start business, they have sometimes not a very realistic approach to what understanding rather what business in India is, because we used to always say you need a lot of patience and perseverance to do business in India, whereas the Indian diaspora already understand the culture over here, the way the business works, and therefore it is much easier able to attract them to make investments here and to be able to have more business in India. Since I'm the CEO of the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber, and I would like to give my views from the Canadian point of view, from the Indian diaspora in Canada point of view. The Canadian Indian diaspora is one of the largest of the world and one of the fastest growing community in Canada. This makes them a national economic asset who should be engaged and deployed as such. In fact, Indian citizens dominate the list of new Canadian permanent residents, and many of them are willing to exert their influence in electoral politics and are engaged in multinational businesses and are thus highly visible. This makes for a ripe environment for India to aggressively tap on their potential. We have almost 1.4 million Indian diaspora in Canada. We have 4 ministers in the House of Parliament and 18 members of Parliament of Indian origin. The students are 6,40,000 at the moment. It started with 76,000 and has had, a tremendous increase. It is, I think today the students, the Indian students in Canada are much more than any other nation. And in fact, the Canadian High Commission in India, first when the agenda was recruiting Indian students, today that has become not such a major agenda of theirs anymore, because they feel that the Indian students are dominating in all the colleges and universities in Canada. Of course, when we have talks with them, we tell them that don't even think about undermining the contribution of Indian students, because when an Indian student goes to Canada, it is the whole family goes to Canada at some time or the other. The Indian student has a more capacity for spending and has more intention of staying on and also bringing money into Canada. Therefore, the Indian student in Canada is a very important part of their economy. And I will touch on this later as to how the students can be approached, and we can have some something which is totally directed towards the Indian student going to Canada. So we have, as I said, that this is the Canadian diaspora is huge over there. The other thing is that for the Indian diaspora in Canada, one thing that attracts them is to be able to invest in real estate in India. So you will find many of them that once they have done well, they would like to invest in either property or in houses, over here. So one suggestion is that this is from the government point of view, apart from, of course, the policy frameworks, which Mr. Manish Singhal also said, it is overall a generic situation that can be addressed later. But otherwise, it may be, home loans, bank loans are made easier for NRIs or OCIs as they're called now. That would, of course, be one big help. Also for agricultural property, whether if they could pick up agricultural land, because agricultural technology is a very big sector at this time for development. In India, and Canada has the best technology. Again, the Indian diaspora, another thing that distinguishes them is entrepreneurship, innovation, and the willingness to take risks. This is a big, big quality. They don't just play safe. So for them, again, if we have schemes mainly directed to them, there will be a lot of them who will come forward with investments, and we need to really reach out to them. A couple of suggestions that I've said, and again these are informal suggestions, but which I think personally would be really helpful. So number one is that, as we said, that there is so much of Indian diaspora in Canada. We wait for things like, say, Pravasya Bharatiya Divas, where we invite the diaspora to come here. We have a lot of business, B2B, B2Gs on the sidelines. We have awards for them. This happens once in 2 years. One idea would be if the ministry can organize people to go from here, 2-3 representatives of the government to go from here to Canada and to have sessions, especially for the diaspora. I know that there have been ministers or there have been the prime ministers gone and addressed them in huge affairs. But what I mean is concentrated to the diaspora in Canada. We go to these different places, address them, talk to them about what all are the opportunities available here, and ask them and speak to them on a one-on-one basis. The Indo-Canadian Business Chamber would be very pleased to work with this ministry to put together such a delegation, to put together such a mission, to go there with the idea of showing the Indian diaspora what the opportunities for investment into India are. We then take down what are the challenges that they would tell us what they face in doing this, and then we could probably put this all into a report and then seriously address these issues. That is one point. Secondly, also when the Indian students who go there, as I said, they are a large majority. These students go with the mindset of settling down in Canada. They go with either they will be doing business or they will be working there. These students also over there, when we go, or there should be some kind of an association where we can have a student community and address them, right from the beginning as to that what they are doing, whether they need any help, and then subsequently, once they have settled, you have a database that these are the new Indian diaspora that is going to be settling down over there, and start talking to them. Again, we as a chamber, we have already a student association amongst our membership, and we keep this alive. In fact, we have been doing, we have the MBA tours for the Indian students who go there, and we always talk to them as future residents or future NRIs. So this is an important community that we must talk to. We must, when I said that, when we have these awards once in 2 years, if you have government representatives who are going to go there on an annual basis, address the diaspora there, you could also have small awards, because a lot of these Indian diaspora do very well in business, and amongst themselves in Canada, there are always some award or the other to the best business, that one who has made a lot of contribution, etc. And we are invited, or because we are in this school, we are given information as to who's getting these awards. But it would be a good gesture from the Indian government to have this on an annual basis, to go there and to give these small just recognition to the Indians over there. And when you're based outside, means a big thing. It's a big thing for them to be recognized. So that would be
4 minutes, please.
Okay. Lastly, I would say that we had a a session with the Minister of Rural Development with our Canadian in Canada. And one thing that she said is that we could have this adopt a village scheme, because that would be good. This would be something, as has been mentioned earlier, that the Indian diaspora in Canada would be very interested in. And I think this is one thing that we can do and talk about. Lastly, the roundtables for diaspora, for Indian diaspora in Canada. As again Manish Singhal said, we'd be very happy to collaborate with Vicky and have these roundtables. This is all that I would like to say, and we are available for any more suggestions, discussions, roundtables. But we're very happy to address the diaspora and see how we can get them not only to invest in India, but to also get from them what are their issues, challenges, what are their thoughts, and put it into a report which we can all share.
Thank you so much, Ms. Nadira, for that very interesting perspective, especially Canadian perspective, and how the NRIs and PIOs could be further facilitated, and how they're an important element in Canadian society as well, and how they would like to invest and be associated with India. Again, suggestions are excellent. They need more encouragement, more acknowledgement, and of course, generic issues of doing ease of business need to be addressed. And I think that is a wonderful suggestion that you've given about adopt a village scheme, something on the lines of what Punjab is doing. But they could do it, other state governments could also do it. And I think in Kerala also they have something on the lines of that. But across the country, you can encourage them and encourage this kind of scheme. Thank you so much for this excellent presentation. And I'm sure what your chamber is doing, and it will sort of include, I'm sure, all your investments and increasing trade between the two countries, etc., will include the NRIs and diaspora Canadians as well, Indians as well in Canada. Thank you so much, and we'll get back to you at the end for some, last words, if possible, if time permits. Thank you. Now, before we go on to question answers, I would like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Munish Gupta, who is the Vice President of the PIO Chamber of Commerce and Industry and Managing Editor of PIO TV, to say a few words to everyone here. Mr. Munish Gupta, are you there?
Yeah. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Manju Seth and Mr. Ramu. We have interacted. I haven't had the fortune yet of meeting Dr. Surbhi Singh, but I'm sure that we will. It's good to see old friends here, Professor Bhatt, Professor and some of us old fogies back 1989 birth of
absolutely, yeah. That's so nice.
Being back 31 years. So what I like to say here, and duly acknowledging other people present here. It's been quite a transformation. It's quite a coming of age and time as India has started to actually engage with its diaspora in meaningful ways. And it started with Pravasi Bharatiya movement about 18-19 years ago. And some of us have been involved from the very beginning in terms of planning and over the years bringing into the Pravasi Bharatiya movement, the No India program, Study in India program, then the Youth Pravasi Bharatiya, and then joining this term of economic engagement with the
some issue of audibility.
So, but can you hear me?
Just tell you very clearly.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, now it's clear, Manish. Yeah.
Okay. So what I wanted to focus was on economic engagement and having heard everybody. Sorry. No?
Maybe you could for a while because we can't hear you.
Straight away.
Just switch off. Yeah.
Maybe I removed I took off my video.
Yeah. I think better? that would be good, Manish.
Yeah, that's a bandwidth issue.
Yes.
So over the years, I have been very particularly enthused with the fact that we want this economic engagement of the Indian diaspora now with India. And I think that's the issue we are discussing here. And in the modern context, I think in the last 6 years, if one looks at how the government of India has actually enhanced and improved and the engagement with the diaspora, I think one important thing that we realized was that there are many challenges faced, whether it's the PIOs or OCIs or many generations of different kinds of overseas Indians with India. And one of the good things that came out of it was, after having discussed this with the Commerce and Industry Minister, beyond the Ministry of External Affairs, this year, I don't know how many of you know, but on 10th January 2020 in Delhi, our Chamber of Commerce, PIO Chamber of Commerce and Industry, working with the Commerce and Industry Ministry, have launched what is called the PIO Investor Help Desk. This is a specialized pathway. Unfortunately, COVID hit, so we have not been able to promote it as we could have or should have. But we are going to do it, because we had a session again on 25th May with the Secretary CPV and OIA, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya. And we are going to take this forward. What we have done is, we want to actually, beyond understanding the issues, Professor Gautam and many others have explained the different issues with different generations and different types of diaspora. But I think the most important thing is to showcase the new India with its new policies and new focus and thrust areas that are available for all sorts of economic engagement. And I wouldn't call them only investment, because I think as Atmanirbhar Bharat and every country starts focusing on manufacturing in their country, there is going to be a sizable contribution that the diaspora can make, and India would want to do trading from India. So the export-import business will become also a very important part of this economic engagement, and the diaspora as pivots and foundations in the countries that they have been living in for many years could become a very important gateway for imports into those countries. So I feel so I'll just conclude by saying that certain ministries, like Ministry of Corporate Affairs, at the central level, I'm talking about, beyond the state governments, which I think now MEA has got officials which it has placed in every chief minister's office, pretty much. So Ministry of Corporate Affairs, Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, Skills, Education, Science and Technology,
rural development.
And even the Jal Shakti, there are places where diaspora only wants to make a philanthropic investment and not worry about making money back, such as adoption of villages. So, and the last thing is youth. I think we need to seriously engage the diaspora youth. I have two sons, and one of them studies in India, so he's very intimate with India. The other one went to school and college in America, so he has less interest in India. But we see the opportunity to bringing the youth together. And I think the youth of India and the Indian diaspora youth are going to occupy very significant positions, social, political, and economic, in the near times, in the very short, next 10 years or 15 years. So I think bringing them together would help this subject and topic a lot. And I'm very happy to be here, very happy to see MEA and so many of us participating in this dialogue, and we will keep taking it forward. Thank you.
Thank you
It's
so much.
marvelous hearing you. Marvelous.
Yes, thank you. And I'm glad that the Center for Facilitating Help Desk has been desk has been set up, and I think you can promote it. And when COVID finishes, I'm sure it will be, it will really take off and really facilitate investments and economic activity in India. Now, from the PIOs. Now, may I request? I think there's one question about from Ms. Atul Dalakoti about leveraging and learning from the Chinese. So I would call on all the speakers and panelists one by one to, or maybe Professor Bhatt on his views regarding this. Last words from all four panelists. Yeah.
Could I? Yeah.
Yes.
The Chinese had a very, very interesting philosophy. I came across in some writings that Chinese from all over the world were willing to send their people for burying in a Chinese village where they came from. So there is a close contact with the Chinese village. from all over the overseas Chinese. So that is one major philosophy which took them in all possible ways, including investments in the village, because whatever they did there, it was helpful for them in the future beyond the life. That's the philosophy they had. And I'm sure we need not have that kind of philosophy. Even in India, I see lots of projects which have come up in medical fields and so on. These students who have gone there to US from here, from a medical college, they got together and were ready to build a super specialty hospital in a rural context in Andhra Pradesh. I have come across this. It's a philanthropic mode. So you have a huge resource outside. All that we need is how do we tap it? How do we channelize it? How do we get these people? And surely I've come across several people, huge business magnates, I'm sure. Manish would know. There's one, Dave Gosain. You must be knowing him pretty well. He's an industrialist owning land with lots of oil coming out of his land. I had the opportunity of going to Trinidad recently, and he showed petroleum took it over for several years of a lease. So we need to have somebody to couple with them. And, these countries now, Suriname has an excellent security possible. And what we need is make inroads. And I'm sure they're willing to connect back with India. And, I mentioned that Suriname is president. That kind of a linkage is something marvelous which we need to really
leverage.
Take it all right. Thank you for. And I was to talk to you about the Chinese. Yeah, Chinese have made that kind of a linkage back home, and the resources have been coming back to China. Other than, of course, their own investments and their special zones, business zones, and so on, which they have harvested in course of time with a lot of investment from outside that helped them quite a bit.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Bhatt. Yes, the Chinese story and the Chinese experience, I think, but we can take lessons or learn lessons from them and see how we can adapt to our situation. Would Professor Gautam or Mr. Manish, I think, is left. Gautam or Nadir, last words? Yes, Professor Gautam? No, he's not there. He's not there.
He's there. He's there, but he's.
Boy is okay.
There's some issue with his. Now I think he's unmuted himself.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Also, Ambassador said, I think there are some questions in the chat. If you can take them up.
Yeah, one I've taken already.
A couple of more. Perhaps you can club them together. Yeah.
Yes. Hello, Professor Gupta. Gautam is not, I think, audible to us. Now, the role of state government is critical to, as diaspora, connect back to their home state. That has already been mentioned, and I think that is, a very important thing. But any comments from Madam Nadira on this? Ms. Nadira?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would, it's true that there's so much of remittances from the Indian diaspora here, and some of the states that have really benefited from those economies are like Goa, Kerala, Punjab, and Gujarat. So, if we can just see the various aspects of these remittances and see the best utilization of them by adopting some best practices from around the world, that would be a great way of utilizing the remittances. And people are very, not only about India, but they have a lot of love for their states. I know people who from Canada, when I meet them, that they want to either whether it's philanthropy or to start some business or even to donate to universities, colleges, technology transfer. They want to do it in their states. So maybe have a state-wise, a state-wise way of addressing the diaspora in Canada. Again, I'm talking about the Canadian diaspora, that we can talk to them and attract them to to do business with those particular states. But I feel that is the best way to go forward.
Thank you so much. And there's one more question in the chat box. The Kochi airport raised money. Kochi airport raised bonds from migrants. This is an example of harnessing money as investment. So maybe this is another possibility, maybe a suggestion. And maybe thoughts on a high-level committee on diaspora, another committee. So any thoughts that will be answered? If Professor Gautam is able to say something last words, then we can have that. Otherwise, I'll give the floor to Dr. Surabhi. Professor Gautam, so thank you so much. Thank you for each one of excellent interventions, and that is very beneficial for our government as well. And your suggestions and interventions will be taken on board. May I hand over now the floor to Ms. Dr. Surabhi Singh.
Thank you, Ambassador Seth, for moderating the discussion. I would now invite Director OIA1, Shri Piyush Gupta, to make the vote of thanks. Piyush, sir, are you there? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm there.
Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of India Center for Migration and MEA, I would like to thank our distinguished speakers of today's discussion for presenting their thoughts on this critical issue today. I would also like to thank the moderator, Ambassador Manju Seth, for efficiently coordinating the discussion. Let me also express my gratitude to Shri Abagani Ramu, Joint Secretary, Overseas Indian Affairs, MEA, my boss and CEO of ICM, for delivering today's opening remarks. My sincere thanks to all our invitees for their crucial insights and interventions on the issue. The Indian diaspora has potential to be the drivers of advancement and business enterprise, economic growth, and employment creation. Especially their prominence in certain sectors such as IT and establishment of dynamic professional and business associations has helped create trust and understanding to expand trade and investment between their host countries and India. They lobby their governments for more grounded linkages with India and facilitate frequent visits, delegations, and conferences across government and industry chambers. The diaspora is therefore a vital factor to India's development story. Presently, the policy of Government of India towards a diaspora is guided by a two-dimensional approach. On one hand, it caters to the necessities of NRIs and PIOs, OCIs, by providing them consular services, insurance, and outreach activities for increased engagement. On the other, it involves measures that encourage the diaspora to add to India's development through philanthropy, knowledge transfers, and interest in various development projects. While the measures put in place by MEA have already been elaborated upon in the opening remarks, and many other remains in the pipeline that will serve to strengthen our ties with the diaspora. These virtual discussions act as the medium through which MEA is listening to the ideas of researchers, policy analysts, industry chambers, and all such other organizations on how to strengthen the linkages between Indian diaspora and their homelands. The ideas that emerge out of these deliberations will help us serve our people better. And let me assure you that MEA will continuously strive to ensure that the roots of our diasporic community remain firmly entrenched in our motherland through various initiatives, and that they continue to thrive in their host countries. I would like to once again thank you all for stimulating this lively and thought-provoking discussion. I'm sure the ideas that have emerged out of today's discussion will guide future research agenda of ICM as well as in framing of MEA's policies on the subject. Thank you.